Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott, and of course, we appreciate always you all tuning us in for another great show. Dr. John Brandenberg is here. We're going to talk UFOs. We're going to talk life on Mars and see what else we can fit on in because it's going to be a damn fast 2 hours. Dirty Filth is here with another great cartoon. But the best part about tonight, we have each and every one of you, including Race Fan in the gold medal position, Robert Lamoth with a silver, Kitty Cattywack taking home the bronze medal tonight, Frankie B, Galactic J, how you guys doing? Lisa Smith, nice to see you. Hi there, Lee the Bee, and Hillbilly Herb. Big Bird, how you doing, my friend? Dave Tiger Williams is here. He'll drop the gloves for you. Dave Tiger Williams will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio, if you don't mind, to the left of the studio. Fast Hemi, what's happening? Mel WD-40 is here, lubing us up for tonight's show, because one thing the UFOs and Mars like is a lot of lube, so Mel's going to get the lube out there to make sure this show runs very, very smoothly. Moving on down, the Andromedan, how you doing? And who else is next? JMJ12, good to see you. So we scroll on down. Les Paul Holland, how you doing, my friend? Am I alive tomorrow? Can you please give me an update? I'd appreciate that. Eternity Eternal, nice to see you. Area 51 has returned. Area 51 will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio, Moving on here, let us say hello to Major Lee. Good morning to you in the UK. Tux and Mufon, how you doing? Road Flare. Thomas Rock, Operation Shutdown at J Truth Seeker. Thanks for all of you coming on in. And Rock and Rory, good to see you. Noble Patrick, how's your evening going? Algaray over on Twitch, so excited about Mars. He did 2,400 standing calf raises in 3 minutes. His legs are tired, but he's here. Mama Catherine's here too. Mwah! I love you, Mama Catherine. I hope you had a wonderful, wonderful day, and I hope you're going to have a great enjoyment listening to this show tonight. Carol Amario, nice to see you. Human Carl, what's happening? How you doing? As we continue on with roll call, and there's Fapperoony. What's happening, Fapster? You're still unattractive. Magneticus, how you doing? Dragonfly, good to see you. Blick74, good to have you here. Good evening, Cosmic Joe. And Necessary Dialogue. Wave to Necessary Dialogue. Necessary Dialogue always waves back. I'm having trouble speaking tonight. Digger Dog, good to see you. Bone Nut, welcome to SOR Chat. Good morning to my fellow Commonwealther. Things not so great in Canada either, my friend. Buckethead, the Soothsayer, how you doing? As we continue on with our roll call, Jessica S. How you doing? Deborah Rooney, nice to see you. And who else is here on our list? Dave Walters, nice to have you here. I'm Hardcore over on X. How you doing? Of course. Let's see who else we have. Number 22 in your program, starting at left wing from Stockholm, Sweden. Lars Jansson. Zenzabil, how you doing? As we continue on with our roll call tonight. And who is up next? Let's scroll on down. Ozzy, good to see you. Boondock Mojo, what's happening, my friend? Paramarv, Matthew Gutka, thank you for coming on in. And Jessica McCreary, your hair looks fantastic tonight. Scrolling on down, let us say hello to Radio Wendigo. And I think we're almost caught up. There we are. Let's get the radio side going. Hello and welcome to the radio and podcast side of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott, and we are here looking on in to Mars, UFOs. Dr. John Brandenberg is here, and we're going to get into some serious awesomeness tonight on the show. We are in roll call on our YouTube side, so stay tuned as we say hello to Mr. Cowley and Walter Kochabinski. How you doing? Nice to have you here. And a reminder to all of you, the Super Chat is open. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. And don't forget, you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. So do me a favor. Throw those horns up, everybody. It's that time. Let's rock. Of Central British Columbia to you listening around the world. This, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out the Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our site as well. You can follow us on X and Spaced Out Radio, Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Tonight's show is brought to you by Jive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Jive Charities today. You can find them on our website. We got a great show for everyone tonight. We're going to learn about Mars. We're going to learn about UFOs. Theoretical physicist Dr. John Brandenberg is here to join us tonight. We're going to have a great time with him. Then in hour number 3, we got Swamp Dweller, and Robin Haynes will be here for the Crypted Report. All right, let's get right to it because it is that time of the night where we start to get into the show. Now, a couple months ago, we had Dr. John Brandenberg on for the first time on this show as we were talking to him about whether or not there was life on Mars. It was so impressive that we literally had to bring him back. And with all the news that has kind of popped up recently, including earlier today, we definitely need to have this conversation. John E. Brandenberg is a theoretical plasma physicist who was born in Rochester, Minnesota, good hockey area there, and grew up in Medford, Oregon. He obtained his BA in physics with a mathematics minor from Southern Oregon University in 1975 and obtained his master's in 1977 and PhD in plasma physics, both from the University of California at Davis in 1981. He presently is working as a consultant at Morningstar Applied Physics, and he does have a big interest in whether or not there's life on Mars. He's co-authored a book in regards to this. He's written several articles, and you know what? Let's just get to him. I could read his resume forever, and that isn't of insult to Dr. Brandenberg, but it's just so impressive that we might as well let the man, the myth, and the legend say it himself. Dr. John Brandenberg, it is good to have you back on Spaced Out Radio. How you doing, my friend?
It's a pleasure and an honor to be back on your show, and I want to say, as an American, I think the world, Canada, our northern neighbors, and we appreciate you deeply. We always thought, in fact, in America, that Canada was an example of what our country could have been if things had been run in a more orderly and tidy manner. And as far as you guys becoming the 51st state, don't worry about it. Our president knows you would vote to probably mostly Democratic. He doesn't want that. He can't have that. So he's yes, he's given to verbal flourish. Let me put it that way. But in the meantime, yes, life on Mars, UFOs, and the great dark skeleton, the skeleton in the closet of the American history, the three assassinations of JFK, RFK, and MLK. Terrible situations, and in the case of JFK, perhaps deeply involved in the UFO cover-up. So basically, when I was in graduate school, I was told not to believe in UFOs. And when you're a graduate student, you're the lowest form of human life, trying to get your PhD. So I said, yes, sir. Please sign my doctoral thesis so I can get out of here and get a real job, which I did. But so I didn't kind of believe in UFOs. But then we discovered the strange things on Mars. And you've never been through a nuclear crisis unless you worked at a nuclear weapons lab, like I did twice, once in Livermore, California, and the other one in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And basically, I saw this stuff on Mars that had been discovered, and I thought, for once, I have hope for the future of the human race. If we can make a big discovery of a dead civilization on Mars, then the Russians and the Americans would have to forget their differences and go up to Mars together and explore it and end the Cold War. And so anyway, that's how I got into this. And then I had to relearn about the UFO cover-up when I moved to Washington, D.C. to work there. And I did learn there about the UFO cover-up, that we had one. And just to make a long story short, I was absolutely devastated when I found out that there was a UFO cover-up, working with the Pentagon and people from the agencies on space and energy. And I for a while contemplated just getting out of the whole scientific business and going someplace and just teaching science in some, but I encouraged myself that there were a lot of governments on Earth, and all of them lie to their people. So I should actually be happy that I was living in a country where, yes, they lied to the people, but I could understand why they were lying to them about this. So anyway, Dave, fire away. What are your questions? I've talked enough.
You have so much fun with this topic, even though it is very serious and very alarming to many people around the world that this phenomena is starting to become not just tinfoil hat conspiracy, but there seems to be a reality to it. You know, for people who you talk to, who come up to you and say, is this really real, Dr. Brandenberg? Is this something we should be looking into? What's your message to them?
I say, here's what I tell them now. I said, okay, I'll give it to you real quick. We're not alone in the universe. We're not the most intelligent people in the universe. I mean, you know, we're not the most advanced, but it looks like things are stable. I now tell people the UFO cover-up itself is the greatest threat to our way of life that is present. It's the aliens from outer space are of a less danger than our own government at this point. So that's what I tell them. I said, that's why the UFO cover-up has to end. It's a threat to our democratic way of life.
Why does it have to end after 70 plus years of secrecy?
Well, and please understand, I don't want it to end abruptly and traumatically, because I have a lot of friends, and I'm living in my hometown where I grew up. I have a lot of old friends from high school, and they are clearly terrified by the prospect of a UFO cover-up actually covering up something real. They have told me so. And so I have actually been spending time thinking, how do you have a path to disclosure? You know, from A to B, from B to C, from C to D. And here's where I took my leading from this. Back in 1937, it had finally sunk into the British people that they were going to have a war, another war in Europe. And they'd lost like 3 million men in the First World War in the trenches. The prospect of another European war terrified them. So what the British Film Board did, which was probably working for MI6, they commissioned a movie called The Shape of Things to Come. My father actually watched it in the theater. He remembered it. It moved him deeply, even though he was in the United States. And in that movie, it's actually from an H.G. Wells novel. In the movie, World War II, H.G. Wells, being a smart guy, foresaw World War II coming. And he had written this novel, and the war starts in 1940. It actually started in 1939. In the novel, the war continued till 1978, with the Western democracies finally triumphant, including Britain. But the human race survived and had all sorts of new innovations, and finally was going off into space. And there's a final word. It had an American actor, Raymond Massey, look at the stars with several of his companions, and they were getting ready to launch the first human beings into outer space, which they did at the end of the movie, having recovered from the war. And he said, what shall it be? All of this or nothing? Are we just going to stay on this planet and do nothing? Or are we going to go out and engage this cosmos that's before us? And so it ended in a very positive way. But what it did was it prepared the British people for a long, heartrending and bitter struggle. They have scenes I would urge all of you to watch the movie Things to Come with Raymond Massey, because they actually depict the London Blitz before it happened. And they have all these Brits putting on gas masks and being bombed from the air, and anti-aircraft guns firing away at stuff in the sky. And that just, they prepared their people for what was coming. And my father, who was then only about 19, he was in college as a football player. He was so excited because he thought, gee, that's what my future is going to look like. And my father, by the way, most of the United States was terrified in the idea of being sucked into another war in Europe. And but then Pearl Harbor happened, and Hitler very conveniently declared war on the United States 3 days after. 3 days after Pearl Harbor, Adolf Hitler declared war on the United States, worrying that the Japanese would conquer the United States and not leave him anything. So he wanted a piece of the America. And of course, Canada was our staunch ally, along with the rest of the British Empire during that war. We deeply, deeply appreciate that. And you went ahead, you went on to the beach at D-Day just the same as we did. But what happened was my father turned on the news on Sunday afternoon, on December 7th and saw that there was the war had, Pearl Harbor had been attacked. He went down immediately, got in line to join the Navy at the town of Bismarck, North Dakota. And the line already ran around the block. When he got to the head of the line, his heart was beating so fast, they said, your heart is beating too fast, we can't take you. So he went out and got in the Army line. And there was a British doctor, not a British doctor, there was an American doctor in the Army, at the end of the Army line, who checked his heart and said, you seem really excited. He says, I was in the trenches in World War I. Are you sure you want to go through that? And my father said, yes. And so he said, go over there and lay down for a half hour and I'll check your heart again. We'll see if you're okay. So my father struggled to get calm. And then they checked his heart. He said, oh, okay, you're good. If you really want, he said, are you sure you want to go get killed in this war? My father said, of course. So my father actually saw that movie and was prepared for World War II to happen. Now, what I'm saying is, with the proper path of preparation, the Western civilization will be well prepared for disclosure and look on it as a positive thing, as a wild scientific adventure. They will not go hide under their beds. Now, and here is the route, by the way. If you read Sun Tzu, The Art of War, he constantly counsels that the direct approach isn't always the best approach. Sometimes you go around and attack the city from behind rather than the front gate, let's for instance. Or better yet, you get somebody inside the city, you bribe them and they open the gate at the middle of the night and you let your army in. But here's the way this scenario works. And I tried this out on my good friend, the doctor, and his lovely wife. And they're very frightened of the whole UFO subject. So his favorite saying was, I'm not going down that rabbit hole, John. Don't talk to me about it. So the highway to disclosure that is non-traumatic and will make the human race embrace disclosure as a wild scientific science fiction adventure is through Mars. We are incredibly lucky. We have found on Mars strong evidence for biology, past and present. I was the discoverer of the Mars ocean. I'll talk more about that later. But not only that, there's a dead, primitive looking, we don't know exactly what level of technology it achieved, civilization, and they look like us. The faces depicted on, and there are faces depicted, not just one face, but several. The faces depicted look like human faces. They don't have fangs. Their heads don't have horns. They look like us, prompting several people to comment, gee, are you sure the human race didn't start on Mars and move to Earth? I myself, as a scientist, think that's unlikely. But let me put it this way. Because the civilization is dead and primitive, it is not a threat to the human race. Nobody from Mars is going to have a war of the worlds with us. They're dead. And it looks like they were a primitive civilization. The archaeology they built looks very similar to archaeology on Earth, except it's big. This is very reassuring to people. They don't have to confront the whole 9 yards of the cosmic cover-up, which involves UFOs and things like this. We could just one of the survival traits of the human race is selective attention. They can ignore things that they make them very unpleasant, make them feel very badly, and concentrate on things that make them feel good. and that makes them optimists. Look on the bright side. So on Mars, we have a situation where at a planet surface we can reach with human beings. Imagine Americans going up there with our Canadian buddies. Our Canadian buddies always accompany us on these expeditions. We're going to land there. No, first of all, we're going to say, okay, there is life on Mars. There's abundant evidence for that, by the way. Okay, just microbial life. So
Right.
We're going to go land at Cydonia Mensa. There's another place where the civilization, in fact, there's two more faces, one of which looks very similar to the face at Cydonia, at a place called Galaxis Chaos. And we're going to go up there. And by the way, you could land rovers there and drive around for years and not see any signs of civilization except a bunch of gravel. The stuff, ask any archaeologist, and an archaeological investigation of a place requires a dig. You have to dig for it. The stuff that you really are interested in is buried 5-10 feet down. You're going to have astronauts with shovels or modern technological equivalents to excavate things. And we're going to have to go investigate this civilization. We're going to have to find out when this happened. Like Mars used to be like Earth. It's not like Earth anymore. We have to find out when and why, when and what happened, and then finally why. And we're going to put a dedicated human, a human colony on Mars. And it's a great scientific adventure. And not only that, it preserves the human illusion, which is useful, that we are still top of the food chain. Hey, we're alive. They're dead.
We got 2 minutes to go before we have to go to break at the bottom of the hour. Dr. John Brandenberg is our guest tonight. There was a recent photo on Mars. I don't know if you saw this. That was just released. And literally, it looks like a doorway cut in a rock side of a hill.
Yes.
Did you get a chance to look at that?
Oh, yes. It looks like a doorway cut into a hill. And, your first question would be, what does that look like? And you say, well, it looks like a doorway cut into a hill. And then you ask yourself, okay, next question, why did not the rover stop and take more pictures of it? And the answer to that is NASA is, what it is there's a Mars cover-up as well as a UFO cover-up now. There's also a lunar cover-up. And there is a meteorite cover-up. They are cracking open meteorites and looking at them with scanning electron microscopes, and they're finding bacterial fossils in them. A former NASA scientist who is now retired, Richard Hoover, has published several articles on this. So we are dealing with a government that is trying to cover up the entire night sky now. But, so yeah, that looked like a doorway to me. Where did the doorway lead? I don't know. It looks like it was a private club.
Maybe. That's a backdoor entrance for the bands to come in. So that way
yes.
That's exactly what that is. Dr. John, I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we are going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. What makes Dr. John Brandenberg think that there was potentially life on Mars? We're going to find out that and the UFO story coming up on Spaced Out Radio in the next half hour. Dr. John Brandenberg, theoretical physicist, is with us right here on the show. He's going to break it all down for us. Stay tuned, everybody. All right, we're clear.
Hey, David, my screen seems to have frozen. Are you seeing me move?
Oh yeah, you're perfect on this end.
Oh, good. As long as I look animated to you, that's all I care about.
You're beautiful. You are beautiful.
How am I doing so far? Am I enthusiastic enough?
That's what I wanted.
Yeah, my father explained to my brother and I that it was only dumb luck that he actually survived World War II, but he went into it very enthusiastically. To him, the movie Things to Come not only prepared him mentally, but made him look forward to what was coming, believe it or not. And so that was a very good strategy by the British government to prepare its people for what was coming. And like I said, they made it in 1937, and they had the war starting in 1940 in the movie, and instead it started a year earlier than that. There's one great story I heard. It was the Germans had invaded Poland finally, and the British government under Chamberlain had finally realized that they were going to have to fight Hitler. And they were allies with the French and some other smaller countries in Europe. And they asked the British chairman, the equivalent of the British Supreme Military Commander and his staff, how long the ultimatum to the German government should be, because they gave them an ultimatum: you quit your attack on Poland, pull back into Germany, or we'll have a war. And we'll give you, they were arguing about how many hours to give the Germans to reverse their invasion. And the British military commander said, I give him an hour. He says, let's get on with this thing.
Lovely.
I know. Well, they were finally mentally prepared. They were mentally prepared for what was coming. And with a stiff upper lip, they just plunged into it. And it was a very frightening time. I mean, even scarier than the times we're living in now. But I noticed your quote, the opening statement of Ronald Reagan.
Yes.
Speaking of and that actually, we listened to him say that roughly 4 times in Washington, D.C. I was working with the military. I was a Beltway Buccaneer around the Washington Beltway, working on the Reagan arms buildup for defense and space, and energy, which were all related parts of defense, basically. And the first 2 times he said it, we thought this is just Ronnie exercising a little, verbal flourish. By the 3rd time, we all started looking at each other, and I said, what is he trying to tell us? And by the 4th time, we said, he's preparing us for something, if, possibly a war with people from outer space. And he was also preparing us for the end of the Cold War, because you will remember the Cold War ended very quickly after those statements. And suddenly Gorbachev was, meeting with us, and suddenly the Russians and us were allies, no longer adversaries.
I agree.
Now, it was a remarkable, almost miraculous end to the Cold War, and it was probably stimulated by we had to have an alliance against an alien threat. That's my interpretation. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it, as we say.
Rock and roll, my friend. We got about 40 seconds here before we're going to come back. And I want to say a big thank you tonight to Walter, Pam, JSCO, and Jay for the great super chats. We greatly appreciate the love and support. And don't forget, you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. You can wear our stuff out in public and be proud of it.
I'm going to tell you the reaction of my good friend to this hypothetical scenario of the government announcing. Yes.
Hold on, John. Here we go. Here we go, the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. We always appreciate you tuning us on in wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Reminder to all of you that if you miss portions of this show or others, you can check out our free archives on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Theoretical plasma physicist Dr. John Brandenberg is here. We're talking Mars, we're talking UFOs, and many other weird, strange items that we could come up with the decorated gentleman who is our guest. Dr. John, welcome back.
Very good to be here, David. Always wonderful to be on your show. And hello, Canada.
Well,
and all
let's
the ships at sea.
Right back to it. Before we get to Mars,
yes,
NASA, over the past about a week or so, 2 weeks, has been tracking this asteroid that right now has a 2.6% chance of hitting Earth.
I know. I will tell you, as a scientist, I wrote a science fiction novel, by the way, called Asteroid 20-12 Sepulveda, where I went through this whole thing, and they don't know what it's made out of. They don't even know how big it is. They don't know its orbit very well. And yet they're reassuring us that we have nothing to worry about. Which of these three things is hard to believe? They don't know whether it's going to hit the Earth or not. You know, if it does hit the Earth and it's bigger than they think, and if it's made of nickel iron instead of clay, organic rich clay, like a lot of asteroids are, at least on the surface, then they estimate it could hit with 10 to 15 megatons of explosive equivalent. And by the way, I've checked. It's coming back on a day of a full moon, which means the moon is going to be part of the gravitational problem of whether it's going to hit the Earth or not. And knowing these guys, I know they haven't put the moon in there in their calculations. So basically, they are giving us reassurances. But this is the first time I have heard a NASA scientist or NASA affiliated scientist say, you know, we may just have to nuke this thing to knock it off course or destroy it. And so, friends, the difference between us and the dinosaurs is the dinosaurs did not have a space program, and they did not have nuclear weapons. Sometimes in the novel I wrote, the Asteroid Sepulveda novel, they end up having to just hammer this asteroid to pieces with nuclear weapons. I mean, they don't have to just use one of them; they have to use multiple ones, but they get the job done in the end. And I wrote it so feeling that it might be prophetic, and so Carl Sagan, on the other hand, had said, "Oh, we don't want to introduce nuclear weapons into outer space." And he said, "I would rather a asteroid hit the Earth and destroyed it than use nuclear weapons on it." And well, that's Carl Sagan. Bless his heart. He can sit in his office as chairman of the astronomy department at Cornell and say things like that all he wants. But somebody like me is going to be in charge and just say, well, okay, what do we got to do? And we'll do it. We will make sure that that asteroid only reaches the Earth in teeny tiny pieces. And we can do it. We can do it. We are perfectly, to avoid doomsday, we and the Russians are perfectly capable of launching doomsday weapons against an asteroid. And that's what we'll do if we have to. So I would just say, take the government reassurances as for what they are. They're just reassuring noises.
Is this one kind of like a potential kill shot?
Oh, it won't. It's not big enough. They say it's about half a kilometer across. You need to get up to about 6 kilometers across to really be extinction level event where human race is put out of business, at least for 1,000 years or so. But humans are survivors, and so it's not a kill shot. It's not a kill shot, and it won't be. I can guarantee you that no piece of that asteroid is going to hit Earth bigger than road gravel.
That'll be interesting.
It'll be even more interesting to watch it happen. It'll be the biggest fireworks display you have ever seen. If it ends up on a collision course with Earth, and we have to, the best way to stop an asteroid like that is to set off a nuke when it's far away from Earth to make it change its orbit, to deflect it so it misses Earth. That's the best way.
How far away would that missile or rocket have to go into space in order to deflect it or blow it up?
Oh, like orbit of Mars, but we know we can do that. It would have to the farther away, and I did this in the novel. I did this calculation for basically for writing the novel. The closer it is to Earth when you try and deflect it, the more energy it takes, and the bigger. The closer it gets to Earth, the bigger the nuclear weapon you have to set off to deflect it. So you want to hit it when it's far out. You want to see it coming with plenty of warning time. In our case, it's like 7 years. That's plenty of warning time. So you're prepared, and you try and hit it when it's out somewhere way past the moon. Now, if that doesn't work, then your backup is to wait till it's much closer to the Earth so you can hit it with something really big, a doomsday weapon. And then you have to, by the way, the Russians demonstrated nicely during the Cold War that you could build hydrogen bombs as big as the Empire State Building if you wanted, with the explosive yield appropriate to that. They called it the Tsar Bomba. And they tested it up in the near the North Pole, and it was based on using an atomic bomb to set off a small hydrogen bomb. The small hydrogen bomb set off a larger hydrogen bomb, and the larger hydrogen bomb then set off a really big hydrogen bomb. So you could chain up. The Russians showed that that worked very well. But the thing is, the bomb gets big and heavy, and so you need a bigger rocket to launch it. And so if it gets closer to you have to wait till it's closer to the Earth, and then hit it with something really big to, instead of deflecting it, you have to pulverize the rock into road gravel, basically, so that most of it will just burn up in the atmosphere. The larger pieces that come down, you have to hit with things like the Iron Dome kind of missile system or Patriot missile system.
Right.
But we know how to do all of those things. And by the way, the smaller chunks, you don't need to use nuclear weapons on them at all. You just high explosive warheads will be fine. And since it's not trying to dodge the missiles, the missiles can hit them very accurately when they're coming into the atmosphere. The big pieces, in other words.
Right.
So anyway, you might find the novel interesting, it's a near-death experience for the human race, because in the novel, the asteroid is big. It's rough. It's as big as the Chicxulub asteroid. In fact, one of the heroines refers to it as the Jiffy Lube asteroid. So it's going to lube the Earth. So we don't let that to happen. So there's a little problem, by the way, David. I'll mention it finally. We have signed a treaty called the Outer Space Treaty of 1967. It sounds like something from science fiction, but it actually is a treaty that the United States signed, fully ratified by our Congress. And I believe Canada has signed it. Britain has signed it. Every major spacefaring country has signed it. And it says two things. There's two very important things. First, it says you can't use nuclear weapons in outer space. You can't put them there. Okay. That's problem number one. Problem number two is another clause in the treaty says you can't claim the moon or Mars to be your national territory. We can't make the moon or Mars our 51st state here in America. That's what the treaty says. However, as characters, the British defense minister actually is quoted in this novel as saying, he's talking to his American counterpart and says, "We all agree that the Outer Space Treaty of 1967 is not a suicide pact." So we're going to use nuclear weapons on this thing if we have to. And so at the end of the novel, they've saved the asteroid, but the Outer Space Treaty of 1967 has been completely shredded. So then people are saying, well, who gets what part of the moon then? So it's the human race in my novels about the future cannot stay out of trouble. Does that sound familiar, David? Does that seem?
It sounds amazing. It really does. Let's get to Mars here for a second.
All right, Mars. Let's go on to Mars.
Where's them aliens hiding?
Well, they probably have underground bases on Mars. By the way, if you want to know the first place you encounter alien moon bases on the far side, it's in a Japanese science fiction movie called The Mysterians. It's made by the same studios that made Godzilla, the Godzilla movies. I recommend it highly to everybody. It has beautiful Japanese women being kidnapped into UFOs. It has underground bases, alien bases on Earth. It has alien bases on the far side of the moon. It has all sorts of directed energy weapon stuff. It's a great show. And did I mention it has beautiful Japanese girls being kidnapped into flying saucers and subjected to hybridization experiments? So there, that's all in the movie. The Mysterians, I highly recommend it. So now, Mars, Earth, the moon, in the novel, the movie, is a place, is the aliens put bases there because they're planning to invade the Earth, and it's a good strategic staging area. Now, Mars would also, since it's close to the Earth, at least part of the year, would also be a strategic place the aliens would want to put bases on. So the rovers have actually taken pictures of UFOs far away in the sky, and they're probably just showing off like they do on Earth. So they, and of course, our space agency will not comment, refuses to comment whatsoever on these objects they image in the sky flying past the rovers. So the aliens that I'm talking about are dead. They are an extinct humanoid civilization, approximately Bronze Age. That's as close as we can estimate. I mean, we basically just know there was a humanoid civilization on Mars. The people didn't have fangs. They didn't have horns on their heads. They don't look like lizard men. They don't look like the gray aliens. They look like us. And they built archaeological ruins that look very familiar to us. They look like ruins in ancient Egypt or in old Mexico. So, but they're dead, and they were primitive. So this is a magical opportunity for the U.S. government to break it to its people that we're not alone in the universe. We have abundant evidence for bacterial life on Mars, and we have what looks like archaeological monuments left by a primitive humanoid civilization, and they're dead. They're not a threat to us. In fact, it allows the human race to preserve the illusion that it's actually top of the food chain for another decade or so. Human beings, one of the traits of human beings is they have very selective attention. They ignore things that they don't like to look at, and they concentrate on things that they do like to look at. The flower in the trash heap, let's say.
Right.
They focus on the flower. And by the way, this is the human race is a bunch of survivors. And to be survivors, you have to be optimists. And to be an optimist, you have to always look on the bright side of situations. If you're living in a cave and a cave bear suddenly shows up at the mouth of the cave, what you think is, we're going to eat well tonight. You don't think that the cave bear is going to come in and kill everybody in the cave. No, you grab your spear with your buddies and you think, well, if we kill this bear, we'll eat well for at least a couple nights. you're an optimist. So the human race, if the government tells them there's life on Mars, there's a dead civilization on Mars that's humanoid and primitive and dead, and did I mention they're dead? And we have, and not only that, we have to go up there with a crash Mars program, put Americans on Mars and investigate, then they'll buy into that completely. They will.
Do you think
they will
that
not disappoint? What's that?
Do you think that there is enough evidence at this point to declare that, even though you're a theoretical plasma physicist, is there enough evidence at this point to claim that there is proof of life that was up there? What would be the?
Yes. Here I will. There's three basic things. We have meteorites from Mars showing what look to be microfossils, but they are also loaded with organic material. So we know that Mars was a warm, wet place in the past. It was very Earth-like. It had an ocean. I'm the guy who discovered the Mars ocean, by the way. Look on Wikipedia, Mars ocean theory. I'm reference number 1. Numero uno. I am reference number 1 because I was the first guy to propose it. So we know that there was a lot of organic matter on Mars, organic residues in the meteorites that we found. We also know there was an ocean on Mars. We know that the ocean life started on Earth in the oceans. And we also know, the third thing we know now is that Mars is breathing. Something on Mars is breathing because as it turns out, oxygen is the 4th most abundant gas in the Mars atmosphere. There's carbon dioxide, soda gas, and then there's nitrogen. Our atmosphere is 80% nitrogen. Then there's argon, which is an inert gas like helium. They use it to fill light bulbs in old style light bulbs, because it doesn't react with anything. And then the 4th one is molecular oxygen, and that's produced by photosynthesis. And people have told me at conferences they know this. I mean, there's a Mars cover-up going on, and it covers, not only does it cover dead civilizations on Mars, it even covers microbes on Mars. But people have told me there is no way to account for the molecular oxygen they see in the Martian atmosphere except by photosynthesis. In other words, microbes or lichens clinging to the Mars rock, making oxygen like plants do on Earth. The other gas they find on Mars is methane. Methane is swamp gas on Earth. It's the product of bacteria eating old organic material. They found old organic material on Mars at a crater that used to be a lake, and they dug down into it and they found organic matter, like petroleum, basically. So we have those three things. We have evidence from early Mars of bacterial kind of substances. We have evidence, strong evidence, that there used to be an ocean on Mars, just like on Earth, where life began on Earth. And we have Mars is breathing right now. In the summer and fall of Mars, the warmest time of the year on Mars, Mars has seasons just like Earth. The amount of methane and the amount of oxygen both rise. Then in the winter, the local winter, they go down.
Perfect.
Both methane, and so you have stuff producing methane, swamp gas, and you have stuff producing oxygen, photosynthesis, and it functions best during the warmest parts of Mars a year, and then shuts down during the winter.
John, I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we've got to go to break here. Okay. Dr. John Brandenberg, theoretical plasma physicist. We're Abducted UFOs next on Spaced Out Radio. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott. All right, we are clear. John, we got about 6 minutes here, just under 6 minutes.
What's that?
We got just under 6 minutes.
Okay, yeah, I'll wrap up the Mars life discussion, and then I'll give you the reaction of my my good friend to this hypothetical scenario of discovering not only life but a dead civilization on Mars, and being told we're going to go up to Mars and have a big crash Mars program.
Right. All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to take a quick break. Dirty Filth, it's all yours, buddy.
All right, Dirty Phil.
Mr. Brandenberg. I also have a glass of delicious tea, Earl Grey hot. That's
Earl
the Picard
Grey,
special,
all right.
The missus and I call it the Picard special.
All right. Edmonton UFO, all right. Well, that looks like 3 kind of lights in the sky. And then I see the little star.
Yes,
I see the stars.
I filmed the UFO in 2020, except the last 0 there got a little bit right there. Got a little bit soggy.
Oh, okay, very good.
I got out of hand with the water sometimes because watercolors and everything. But
hey, I've been watching you do your artwork, and I'm kind of an amateur artist myself.
Hey, you know what? That makes 2 of us.
And, it's a great, a picture's worth 1,000 words. And, like book covers, as long as I have a pretty woman's face on the cover, it sells.
Well, yeah, that's actually, it's always easier to sell a cute lady than like a crusty old guy or a bald-headed dude.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean, you could maybe put me on a cover with something about Sasquatch and a hairy chest on my back would probably work out good, but
oh yeah, there was this movie that came out recently called A Good Man, A Better Man, and it featured this chimp guy, CGI chimp, singing rock songs, and I thought, what? I said, chimps are really ugly. Actually, I find gorillas to be far more interesting looking than chimps. Chimps look too much like us. And it absolutely bombed historically at the box office. I mean, the theaters were just empty when it opened.
Well, you know what that means. In about 5 years, it's going to be really popular, and because it always seems like the movies that are terrible in the theaters seem to go on to become decent
cult classics,
and everybody will, cult classic. That's the word I'm looking for.
Oh yeah, I have some movies that I don't know how well they did at the box office, but I just always love to watch them. Planet of the Vampires and Death Race 2000 with David Carradine,
things like that. David
Carradine.
Like you know what my absolute favorite David Carradine film is?
What
is the Sword and the Sorceress?
I missed that one.
It's a super old film back when in like the 80s when they were taking advantage of all the Conan stuff.
Oh yeah.
And the Sword and the Sorceress, and it was based off there was a Japanese film. Basically, the point is that he's a lone wanderer, walks into a city. He plays off of 2 different warring factions, but it's really good, cheesy.
Oh, I'll have to check that out. How's the Sorceress look?
She's cute, and there's lots of boobies and cheesy violence. So
I'm a Roger Corman fan.
Yeah.
I mean, Roger Corman is one of my favorite directors, because he knew how to make a movie with lots of eye candy in it, and hey, I got 3 kids and 2 grandkids. That tells you everything. And I was married
just gotta
twice.
throw in some Throw in some fantasy stuff.
Oh,
Couple
yeah.
movies, cheesy violence, and there you go. And like the
Well,
obligatory, like the planet has 2 stars, so they
2
and they don't even
stars.
they play it at the beginning, like, oh, 2 stars, desert planet, and then the next thing you know, all the shadows work fine. And every time I watch it, I'm like, Lover, look at this. There were 2 stars at the beginning, and now the shadows are fine. She's like, Sugar, just enjoy the film. And it's terrible.
That's
me.
right.
I gotta pick it apart because curse me for having an artistic eye.
Sure. Well,
Jurassic.
you made a beautiful picture there. What's the flag show?
Oh, it's actually a bus stop. It says bus stop because
okay.
the bus stop doesn't. This actual bus stop doesn't exist on 156th Street in Edmonton anymore. They're removing it for light rail transit. But
hey, I want you to know. I want you to know, Dirty, that in my novel about the asteroid.
We got 10 seconds here, guys. I apologize.
Okay, never mind that. We'll talk about that later.
Gotta go. Love you, everybody.
See you, Dirty.
Okay, bye-bye. Nice talk. Great talking to you.
Here we go, everybody. Go with the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We're talking to Dr. John Brandenberg, theoretical plasma physicist, about Mars and UFOs. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Naricorn. Naricorn is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Let's head back to Dr. John Brandenberg hanging on out with us as at Mars and everything. Dr. Brandenberg, you wanted to finish up on life on Mars and why you think it's there.
Yeah. So we have very strong evidence that there's life on Mars. Basically, some figure of authority, some adult supervision is just going to have to stand up and say, okay, there's life on Mars. All you academics, if you want to get grants from NASA, you're going to have to study life on Mars. There, period. That's how the government in this country sets the academic tone. They control the money. If they tell everybody there's no life anywhere except on Earth, and if you want to get grant money, you have to sign a statement saying you agree with that, then everyone signs that statement because they want those checks. And then if the figure of authority says, oh, everything, there's microbial life on Mars, deal with it. And if you want grant money from us, you're going to have to sign a statement saying you believe that. And you would be amazed. You'd be amazed how quickly everyone in academia will sign on to that. There'll be a few grumpy people, but they'll be forced into retirement because they won't get any money from the government. So I worked in academia for about 5 years. It was a eye-opening experience. But okay, so there's life on Mars, microbial life. Okay, if there's life on Mars, there's life in the stars. We know that. So that gets us through the first hurdle. The second hurdle is intelligent life. We have a dead civilization on Mars that looks like it was primitive, and they look like us. They're very humanoid. They aren't scary looking. They're dead. And I forgot to mention, they're dead. So they're no threat to us, right? They're not going to invade us. We're not going to have an Independence Day from Mars attacks or anything like that. These people are dead. So then we say, oh, we got to go up to Mars and investigate. put humans on Mars. And that is a scientific adventure. That's the Apollo program all over again. And that's big money to the aerospace giants. They'll love it, especially Elon Musk. And we do it. And we do it in less than 10 years. We put people on Mars in less than 10 years, just like Apollo. And that makes it a big scientific adventure. And then you get to Mars and you say, okay, where's your evidence of life on Mars? And you say, life and intelligence on Mars. You say, it's standing right in front of you wearing a spacesuit. We're on Mars, therefore there is life and intelligence on Mars. So that means that Mars has become part of the human sphere. And that makes us feel very powerful. It makes us spacefaring. And it makes us feel like we're living in a good science fiction movie. There. So Dave, that's how we do it. I did run this scenario hypothetically by my good friend and his wife. His only reaction was, okay, the only problem I have with this is that Mars is too close. He says, I'd prefer it was 1,000 light years away.
I can totally get
showing, that people are afraid of the idea of extraterrestrial life. They're afraid it'll come here. We'll have an Independence Day or a War of the Worlds.
But it is here.
But I know that. What is really pathetic is these scientists keep talking about Fermi's paradox. So they said, well, gosh, we know there must be intelligent life out there. How come it never shows? How come we don't see any signs of it? Well, because we have a government that if it finds signs of intelligent life in the universe, packs it away and puts it in a warehouse. That's what they do. And they form a cordon around the site where the spacecraft crashed. And they tell everybody, move along here, folks. Nothing here to see. And that's the way everybody on Earth reacts to government authority, especially if they're wearing guns. That's just the way it is. Now, the whole UFO thing is a whole different can of worms. My father was a medical doctor, and he was chief of medicine at the hospital. He was very respected, and one of the problem children on his staff was the neurosurgeon, and the neurosurgeon was a superb brain tumor kind of, he was a brain surgeon, and he was very, very good. But he had no bedside manner. He seemed to almost take pleasure in telling people bad news without any, he'd just march out in the hall and see relatives of people who were waiting to see how the brain operation had turned out. And he'd say, your mother or your grandmother's going to probably die in a few days. Sorry, they can't do anything more. And people would get furious. They would get really mad at him. So finally, he was reduced to having to leave his house through his hedges around his house so that lawyers could not meet him to serve papers on him. Because people were suing him because they were mad at him. And I had a good friend who ended up getting a spinal injury. And he walked in there, the guy's in traction and all this stuff. He was injured in a hang gliding incident. They said, your chances of ever walking or even using your arms again are pretty much zero. He just told him that. And I just said, well, no wonder he's constantly getting sued. So you got to break things to people, especially things that they're afraid of. You got to break it to them the right way. Now, this way We break it to them on Mars. Anybody with any brains knows what this means as far as the UFO question, but because of the human psychology, the way it preserves itself, they won't ask any questions. I mean, in this country, the government's credibility about just about everything is zero. But if you tell them there's nothing to worry about with the UFOs, or these, they call them drones now, everybody says, well, you know, you're right. There's nothing to worry about. And, you know, that's all it takes. Somebody, some figure of authority, adult supervision says, you've got nothing to worry about. These are all government drones. Ha! And journalists who would normally not believe the government if it told them the sun was going to rise at 6 a.m., they would immediately go check it. Take these statements with childlike credulity, because it makes them afraid to think that the government may not have all the answers. So the government obliges by telling them it has all the answers, and it gives them an answer. So on this case, the government says, okay, there's microbial life on Mars. Everybody realizes that means there's life in the stars. There's a dead civilization on Mars, but it's dead and it's not a threat to us, and we're going to go up and investigate it. You got to say all three things. One, that we know things. Two, the first two things are we know things. The third one is we're not helpless. We're going to go up and investigate. We're going to become spacefaring. The journey to Mars is as important as what we find when we get there. Yes. Now my friend threw in, oh, well, I wish Mars was like 1,000 light years from here. And I said, well, it'd be really hard to find these things if it was 1,000 light years from here. But we're going to just have to be happy with what we got. We got, it's, you know, it's not a threat. They look like us, and we can get there. And that means that you can't have the fourth condition that it's 1,000 light years from here. No. So anyway, Dave, that is how we break it to the people. And then later we bring up, oh yes, what about these lights in the sky? Nothing to worry about, we say. Nothing to worry about there.
Well, let's talk about the UFOs, because a lot of people are starting to pick up the story. A lot of people are realizing there is momentum to what is going on. There's a lot of question online whether or not the whistleblowers are legitimate, or whether they are, you know, just pandering to a narrative that we really don't like in the UFO community prior to 2017 when the New York Times article came out. You know, so where do you think these are coming from, and should there be concern?
Well, first of all, you should be concerned. You cannot divorce questions of extraterrestrial visitation here you cannot divorce them from questions of our defense. You can't. I'm sorry. I posted one of the things I say is that in the rest of the galaxy, there are many planets with oceans in them, and big fish eat little fish in all of those oceans. I then posted a picture showing a killer whale chasing a porpoise. And the caption was, no, they are not playing tag. The killer whale is intending to make a meal out of that nice flippery dolphin. And I'm sorry, that's the way things are. We live in a competitive dog-eat-dog universe, but for some reason, we seem to have escaped the worst of that, and we'll just count on our luck continuing. The phrase on our money and here in the States is "In God We Trust." It was put there by at the order of President Eisenhower, who directed the D-Day invasion, and he knew how to pray when necessary, and his prayers apparently have been answered. Has there been an Independence Day? Has there been a War of the Worlds scenario? No. That's one way that the government can preserve this ridiculous UFO cover-up. So that's good. So we just take advantage of it. And the cattle mutilations, the human mutilations, the abductions, the military clashes, all those reports, we just set them aside for right now. We say, just don't worry about it. There, don't worry about it. And so that's my model for how the U.S. government should handle disclosure. Life on Mars, dead civilization on Mars, we're going to Mars. There. It's active, it's proactive, and it's not threatening. And I wish the universe was different than it is. We all, when we were children, we all imagined that the other people out there in the stars were made of, were more advanced morally and more noble than human race. Now we found out, at least in some cases, they aren't. I'm sorry. The little short gray guys apparently are the scum of the galaxy. And I'm sorry to tell people that, but that's just the truth. We seem to have, based on reports, we seem to have three different groups, and I'm oversimplifying everything. Of course, the universe is even more complicated than the Earth is. Look how complicated the human race is. We have the little short gray guys. They apparently want this planet. They were trying to make hybrids, apparently, with that's why the abductions occurred. They were trying to terrorize us by mutilating a bunch of cattle and human beings, as it turns out. The government comes and whisks those bodies away and cremates them before anyone can figure out what caused them to die. That's unfortunately true. We have military clashes with them. But we had one good thing, one piece of really good luck, apparently. Here's what the good luck was. Their blood chemistry is much different than human beings. Our blood is red. It's based on iron. Iron carries a lot more oxygen than, say, copper. The other blood chemistry on Earth is what's called hemocyanin. There's hemoglobin, that's iron-based. There's hemocyanin. This is what octopi use. This is what the tarantulas and scorpions use. It's blue. Apparently, the little gray aliens have blue bloods. So what they tried to do is make a hybrid between human beings and their own species. But the fact that the grays have copper-based blood and we have iron-based blood meant it didn't work, apparently. You hear reports of a lot of embryos, but almost no reports of actual gray human hybrids that are adults. They apparently die off very quickly. They're wimps. It's because you can't mix those two blood chemistries and have something that works. You'd have to make a compromise, and everybody knows I don't know if you're an engineer, but everybody knows that the word compromise to engineers is a bad word. We like things to be straightforward. So the third group, by the way, the second group looked just like us, the Pleiadians. And they're different types, I guess, but the basic Pleiadian type looks just like us, basically Northern European. And we know they don't like the grays, the gray aliens, and they especially don't like the dragons, the draconians, who are lizard people. That's the third group. So we have we have three competing groups, and apparently, well, David, like if you look at a map of Europe,
Mhm.
there's this country called Luxembourg. It's stuck right in between Germany, France, Belgium, who's an ally of the Great Britain. And you think, how could a country like Luxembourg survive surrounded by such powerful neighbors? Well, it survived because it was surrounded by powerful neighbors. If anybody tried to take Luxembourg, they'd have to fight the other people around them. So Luxembourg survived and still survives. They did fight the Battle of the Bulge there, by the way. So it's strategic territory, but no one could ever take it. So they had to just leave it alone. It survived because it was in a kind of neutral zone. Apparently, the Earth is the same way. We're in some kind of cosmic neutral zone, like the Romulan neutral zone in Star Trek. By the way, if you want to have a close approximation to what the human situation is and what it will be in the future, by the way, it's Star Trek. Captain Kirk, who is a good Canadian.
Yes, he is.
Yes, he is. He's a good Canadian.
3 minutes to go before we got to go to break at the bottom of the hour.
Okay. We're going to be fine. Our future is going to look like Star Trek. Captain Kirk will be flying the USS Enterprise, and we will be part of his crew. There.
Well, let's hope that it finally gets to that type of technology. But I mean, that means pretty much the military industrial complex has to be torn down.
Oh, yes, there are a few little details we have to get past. Yes. Military industrial complex. Warren, the person who invented that term was the same Eisenhower who put "In God We Trust" on our money, and apparently was the first person to have a face-to-face meeting with extraterrestrials. So he warned about the military industrial complex, and we have to the UFO cover-up, by the way, is now wired into the industrial complex. So it is now a much greater threat to our way of life. The UFO cover-up is a much greater threat to our way of life in both the US and Canada than aliens from outer space. Bye-bye.
Let me ask you this. Is the cover-up and the threat narrative more dangerous than the aliens themselves?
Well, from what I understand, some of the species of aliens out there are very dangerous indeed. So we need a strong defense. The violent tendencies of the human race, except for the Canadians. We know that the Canadians are all pacifists. I mean,
no,
I've been to several hockey games, and I know how well behaved you guys are.
Good.
And I know what would happen to SS soldiers in World War II when they were captured by the Canadians. They didn't live long. I know that. So I know the Canadians are part of the human race, just like we are. But here's the thing. The human race is a very violent bunch. We're willing to fight to the death, especially to people who are very different from us in appearance and culture. And we have enormous amounts of nuclear weapons, which, by the way, can be triggered with a Ronson lighter. You don't need a complicated computer to set off a nuclear weapon, especially if you don't intend to launch it. So there is a war plan, apparently. I put it called, let's call it War Plan Masada, that both the United States and the Soviet Union signed on to in the 60s. And that says we will detonate all of our nuclear weapons in a Dr. Strangelove doomsday if the aliens try to take this planet and look like they're going to succeed. There. So all they'll get is...
We're going to go to break here right now. Dr. John Brandenberg, we have until the top of the hour.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
All right, John, there we go.
I studied Canadian history. I know the history of Canada.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So we don't need to go into the details. So anyway, and so anyway, the human race is very violent and is very heavily armed, and those were considered vices in the past. No, in the new age, they're actually virtues. That's one of the reasons we're still here talking about a UFO cover-up rather than having the place be run by gray human hybrids. So there. I'm sorry. If you're looking to somebody who thinks that the rest of the universe is rainbows and unicorns, I'm not your guy. I'm half Viking. Yeah, I know you don't think. I know you don't believe that.
Oh, my friend, you were awesome.
Thank you. Hey, we're gonna do fine. We're gonna do fine. You know, just imagine telling Captain Kirk there's a UFO cover-up, and he'd say, "Yeah." He'd say, and you'd say, "There are ETs," and he said, "My best friend is an ET. That's Spock." And by the way, Spock was a Vulcan. The Vulcans are the Pleiadians in the Star Trek saga. That's how the American public got introduced to the idea of aliens who were so human they could have children with human beings. Spock's mother was an Earth woman, and his father was a Vulcan, and he was certainly very healthy. And that's the future.
One way to look at it.
We're going to be part of the Federation. I really believe that.
Well, just remember, my friend, when you're looking into your history realm, George Jetson will turn 3 this year.
What's that?
George Jetson will turn 3 this year.
I used to love the Jetsons. You know what I particularly loved was when they would zero in on a blue-white star at the beginning of the show, and then it would turn into the Earth, because that's what the Earth looks like. It looks like a blue star from the distance. And that's how the human race will look on itself in the future. We're just another star in the sky. Yeah, we may be a speck of dust, but so is everybody else. I mean, for people, imagine if you're a military person just after World War II and you're recovering bodies that have been half eaten by coyotes and vultures in the New Mexican desert after Roswell. And somebody is going on, "Oh, these people are far more advanced than us." Well, they're dead, though. They obviously make mistakes just like humans do. And when they die, the coyotes and the vultures eat them just like they eat us, you know? So, yes. But even a viewpoint of mine, which I think is free of illusions about the cosmos, I'm still an optimist. I still believe I'm going to be serving with Captain Kirk, or my children will.
Mm-hmm. I don't blame you. Keep up the dream, man. Keep the dream alive.
Yeah, that's right. The mission, go where no man has gone before.
Right. All right. We got about 55 seconds here. Big thank you to Walter, Pam, JSCO, Jay, Firewater General, and Linda for the super chats. Hi, Mad Kiwi. How you doing? We're going to get to some audience questions coming up here.
Absolutely. Right, and let's talk about the assassinations.
Sure. Lots to talk about. We got about 30 seconds. And,
Great being on your show, David. Great.
Oh, I love having you here, John. I love having you here. It's so much fun.
Well, invite me back in a couple months, that's or whenever you feel like
Oh,
whenever
yeah.
there are developments.
We will, boss. Hold on. Here we go with the second half of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight we got Dr. John Brandenberg at the top of the hour. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you for tuning us in and enjoying the real life woo of our lives. Reminder to all of you that if you missed portions of this show or others, you can always check out our free archives on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Theoretical plasma physicist Dr. John Brandenberg is here talking to UFOs. We're going to get to some audience questions momentarily. But first, you wanted to quickly mention something about Anna Polina Luna. She came out earlier basically saying that they are establishing a new doctrine within the U.S. government about accountability and honesty, basically.
Yes.
Paraphrasing here. They want to bring the truth to the American public of what happened to JFK, RFK, Martin Luther King, 9/11, the COVID pandemic, UFOs, USOs. What do you think's going on?
Well, and unique among the human race, the American government is not always truthful to its people. I say that laughing. All governments lie to their people. Even occasionally the Canadian government, I understand.
Oh, all the time. You don't know our prime minister.
Oh, we're very familiar with Mr. Trudeau. And, but anyway, okay, they're going to start disclosing. Okay, the first thing is JFK was probably assassinated because he was about to talk about the UFO cover-up. And now, JFK was a very complicated man. I won't go into all the details, but remember, if you'll all remember the show Dallas, where they had the episode "Who Shot JR?"
Yes.
And J.R. Ewing had so many people who hated him that the Dallas police basically had to rent an auditorium to interview all the possible suspects because so many people would have wanted to kill him. And as it turns out, now that we understand JFK, let's say the complexity of his character, we understand a lot of people would have wanted him dead. But one of the more powerful groups that wanted him dead was a collection of intel types who wanted to preserve the UFO cover-up. And that may have been, people in the government who said, oh, you can go after the mob after getting elected because the Chicago mob gave you the election in Illinois. And then you went after them. We can protect you from the mob. Yes, you had Marilyn Monroe. You had an affair with Marilyn Monroe and then killed her when you thought she was going to talk. We can forgive you for that, but we can't forgive you for trying to break the UFO cover-up because it gives us our power. So they had him killed. And it's just obvious to me as an American that he was killed by a conspiracy.
Anna Polina today letting it out that she believes that there were two shooters.
Oh yes, there were probably, and there was probably a third shooter just as backup. Yeah, Lee Harvey Oswald was like Crooks, the guy who tried to shoot now President Trump. At least Lee Harvey Oswald had a reputation for being a good shot, but he was obviously a patsy. And just like Crooks, that character who was killed. And it's funny, they kept mentioning that Crooks was talking to all these people overseas. And then the FBI released nothing about it. Now, you also ask, how could Lee Harvey Oswald be a U.S. Marine, defect to the Russians, live in Russia, get a Russian wife, and then be let back into the United States and live in Texas? How could that possibly happen? And then he kills the president. So anyway, so that's a big closet full of skeletons for the American people. Then RFK, that's a much simpler one. Some people, it wasn't just that people were mad at JFK; they were mad at RFK too. He went after the mob in Chicago that had basically gotten JFK elected president, because when he carried Illinois, that gave him the presidency. And then RFK aggressively went after the mafia, and there were a lot of hard feelings about that. In fact, RFK had a reputation for going after anybody he didn't like. George Orwell in 1984 said, "Watch out for Big Brother." Well, during the time when RFK was the Attorney General for his brother, JFK, the saying in this country was, "Watch out for Little Brother." So he got killed, and under suspicious circumstances. And then, of course, Martin Luther King, his big mistake was to start opposing the Vietnam War. He was going to end the Vietnam War, or basically encourage all black members of the military from not joining the army or being drafted. And that's probably what signed his death warrant, because we were fighting the Cold War with the communists, and Martin Luther King had decided he wanted to oppose that. And the person who killed him, once again, seemed to have had mysterious benefactors all during his career as a petty criminal. And of course, Sirhan Sirhan was a nobody, but also a Palestinian, so a very convenient patsy. So I think all three assassinations were conspiracies. That's what I think. Prove me wrong. But they all occurred under a Democratic administration. So one of the reasons the Republicans in this country, who now hold all three branches of the government, are eager to investigate this is because it gets the truth out there. And it all happened during a Democrat administrations. So now 9/11, I was in Washington, D.C. when 9/11 happened. It's my understanding that in the Clinton administration that had preceded the Bush administration, when the 9/11 happened, they actually had the entire 9/11 plan on the table in front of them. They looked at it and said, "Oh, that's crazy. Nobody would ever do anything that crazy." And this is why I think it was Lawrence Eagleburger, when asked to help investigate 9/11, was caught smuggling classified documents from the National Archives out in his underwear. he would take them home, shred them, and then flush them down the toilet. So we don't know. He was taking papers that were obviously, I think, my own theory, they had intelligence that 9/11 was going to happen, and they ignored it. By the way, at Pearl Harbor, 2 days before Pearl Harbor, they had it right on the table in front of them at Pearl Harbor. Oh, we have this Japanese fleet that seems to be coming across the Pacific. What could they be aimed at but us? And Admiral Kimmel, who was in charge at Pearl Harbor and who'd been kept out of the loop of everything they knew in Washington, D.C., compartmentalized information even in those days, just said, well, nah. He said his answer was, if the Japanese attacked us at Pearl Harbor, that would mean war with the United States and the Japanese would lose. So the Japanese would not be crazy enough to attack Pearl Harbor. That was that's why he decided that it was not a possibility. And I mean, I was in Washington, D.C. working for the defense and intelligence establishment when 9/11 happened. It was like a living nightmare.
I bet.
And I mean, suddenly an airliner runs into the Pentagon, and you have the entire Pentagon staff running down the highway to get away from the Pentagon. I mean, it was, I remember standing in a conference room. We were all watching the whole thing unfold on a big screen TV, everybody in the building in this conference room. And we watched the first tower fall, and the guy next to me burst into tears because we realized we'd watched several thousand people die right in front of us. And I turned to him and I said, I knew him, I'd worked with him. And I said, Don, get a grip. We're at war now. We're at war. You got to chill. You got to chill. We're at war. And other people led him out of the room, sobbing. And me, I just went cold as ice. I'm half Viking. I understood it. Once I realized, okay, these are the new rules. I'd had a premonition, by the way, because they made the movie Pearl Harbor just before. Yes. And I had a premonition after watching the movie Pearl Harbor. I thought something is coming. I know something is coming. And they'd even warned us 2 weeks before it happened that we could expect a large-scale terrorist attack, but it was supposed to be overseas at one of our overseas bases. Not in New York City at the two towers. So right. I'm glad that there will be an investigation of 9/11. We'll find out who knew and when did they know it. That's what I believe they'll find. I do not believe that it was a conspiracy by the U.S. government myself. I just don't believe that. For one thing, David, I know our government well enough from watching its workings in Washington, D.C. for 15 years at close range. They are not competent to pull off something like that. You know, too many people would talk. And so I think it was a bunch of crazy Middle Eastern terrorists. So that's my own theory on 9/11. But we had warning, but we ignored the warnings. The next thing is the COVID infection was apparently, its invention and development was made in China, our good trading partners, with US money. And the reason that had happened is that Fauci was recruited to send money to this lab, the Wuhan lab, because the US government knew the Chinese were trying to make some kind of bacteriological weapon, and they wanted to get in the door to see what the Chinese were up to. People's Republic of China, I'm talking. So in order to get in the door at the Wuhan Institute, we gave them money. And they promptly turned around and used that money to do research that was forbidden in the United States to create a virus that would evade a lot of human immune responses and mutate fast so that it would be difficult to make a vaccine. By the way, we have now, we have the vaccine against the COVID. It doesn't work. I know doctors who've had all of their vaccinations and they get vaccinated for everything, the flu, COVID, all the boosters, everything like that. They get COVID and they get the flu anyway.
I hear you. Let's see. I want to get into some audience questions here before
Yes, please.
Before we go any further. Start off with Boondock here. Isn't there visual evidence of another planet colliding with Mars?
No, there is none. Mars is next to the asteroid belt. Now, the asteroid belt, one theory is that it was another planet, or maybe there were two planets in the asteroid belt and they ran into each other. The other theory, by the way, is which I believe is that you'll notice if you do a map of the solar system, very quick, I'm not going to dwell on this. Okay, the inner planets, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, they're all small rocky planets. And then the outer planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. They're big gas giants. The asteroid belt looks to me like a place that couldn't figure out what kind of planet it wanted to be. So it just stayed disorganized as a bunch of rock. Now, I don't know. But anyway, Mars is next to the asteroid belt, so it gets hammered by the asteroid belt. Almost all the meteorites that strike Earth are from the asteroid belt. But those are only the meteorites that get past Mars. I mean, it tells you something. The rovers drive around and they find all these nickel iron meteorites lying around their landing sites. Mars is getting hammered by asteroids all the time. That's why there's so many craters on it. So, by the way, that would also increase, just like it wiped out the dinosaurs and promoted mammals on Mars, so that intelligent life. I hope that answers your question.
All right, let's go to another question here. Let's go over to Sierra. Did Mars have an atmosphere before? Is there evidence of like some sort of nuclear bomb that hit Mars?
Yes, there is. And I have shown. By the way, I wrote the article on the thermonuclear holocaust on Mars. Before I wrote the article, I had shown, when I was in Washington, D.C., I had shown the data I had found to support that hypothesis to several nuclear weapons specialists. And they couldn't be quoted on the record, but they said yes. The Martian atmosphere is loaded with a isotope called xenon-129. And it's the product of nuclear explosions. It's stable. It's not radioactive. So once it's made, it stays around forever. But on Earth, xenon-129 and xenon-132 are both balanced. On Mars, and they are in every other place in the solar system that we've measured, in ground up meteorites, in the planet Jupiter, where we've sent a probe, on the solar wind. The moon rocks, they show 132 and 129, 1-to-1. On Mars, there's 2.5 times more xenon-129 than there is 132. And that's a signature of a thermonuclear explosion. We're talking, though, apparently, we have found 2 radioactive hotspots on Earth, on Mars, both over where what used to have been an ocean. There's no craters there. There's just radioactivity. And it's these were nuclear weapons apparently dropped from space that were as big as the Empire State Building. Now, the civilization that was on Mars looks like it was primitive, Bronze Age, roughly. I'm speaking out of ignorance. I don't know what its technological level was. I know that's what it looks like. But apparently, some advanced space power came along, decided to make an example out of Mars. Mars was like Alderaan in Star Wars, and they just not only destroyed the civilization on Mars, they destroyed Mars so completely it could never recover. That even if people buried themselves in shelters, that by the time they came out, there would be nothing to come out to the surface to on Mars. Okay, so it used to have an atmosphere roughly the same density and pressure as the Earth. That's why it had a liquid ocean, as I mentioned. If you took at Wikipedia, Mars ocean theory, I'm reference number 1. I was the first person to announce it. NASA doesn't like me, so they never give me credit. That's okay. We'll see who laughs last in all of this. But in the meantime, Mars had an atmosphere like Earth. By the way, the reason, if you look at pictures of Earth from space, the places that are deserts, that there's no clouds, there's no water, there's no forests, they're bright red. Earth is the second red planet, and it's red because of the oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere combines with the iron in the from the lava in the Mars soil, in the soil of Earth, and it turns it into bright red hematite. So Earth is a red planet. That's why Mars is red. It used to have an oxygen atmosphere. So all of that, by the way, is listed in you can read about that in the book Mars, Death on Mars by John Brandenberg, Evidence for a Planetary Nuclear Massacre.
Let's get to one more question. We got time for one more. We got just under 2 minutes.
All right.
Mel U40. What would happen if a nuke exploded in space?
Oh, we already know. We set them off in space. It makes a big fireball that changes different colors. And instead of a mushroom cloud, it forms just a big ball, a big fireball, like a star. And it starts out blue-white, and then as it expands and cools, it goes to white, and then finally to yellow-white, and then finally to deep red, and then finally goes out. And we did that because we launched nuclear weapons into space and set them off. One of them was called Starfish Prime.
Do you think we've found any fossils or anything on Mars with the rovers?
Oh, I believe they found a lot of things on Mars, and they're not disclosing. I've had people tell me that.
Wow.
There's been a there's a Mars cover-up as well as a UFO cover-up.
We definitely know that.
All right. It means Mars is the best way to break it to the people that we're not alone, and that there's other life and other intelligences in the universe. It's very non-threatening.
Well, let's hope that they can bring some fun back to this planet, because it's not very fun right now.
It's
John,
not very fun right now.
Back on Spaced Out Radio, my friend. It is always a great time to have you here, and we're going to do it again probably in a month or two.
Very good. Well, for those in America who are listening, great. For those in Canada, always goodwill towards our northern neighbors.
John Brandenberg, everybody. Coming up next, we got Swamp Dweller and Robin Haynes with the Crypted
You're
Report.
listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
All right. We are clear. John, thank you
There's
very
only
much.
one thing, the only one thing missing from this session. We didn't talk about Bigfoot.
Next time. Next time you're up here, and I'll take you to my Bigfoot spots.
That's just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'll tell you what. Somebody asked me about why, if I was interested in Mars and UFOs, why I wasn't interested in Bigfoot or the Loch Ness monster, and I put it this way. I said, when you like to eat wild mushrooms,
Yes.
you're especially careful which ones you eat.
Very true. All right, buddy. You take care.
Okay, David, thank you so much. God bless you, and live long and prosper.
All right. Take care, buddy.
Oh.
John Brandenberg, everybody. We'll bring him back on in a couple of months because he's just too awesome not to have on this show. I'm going to be right back. You guys sit tight and enjoy. All right, I'm back. All right. Why are we squatching in our chat room tonight? We don't do that here. All right, big thank you tonight to Chill Farm, Major Lee, Linda, General, Firewater, Jay, JSCO, Pam, and Walter for the great super chats tonight. Greatly appreciate the love and support, everybody. Thank you. Here we go in the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. We always appreciate you putting us on in wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Naricorn. Naricorn is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Let's head to the swamp.
Hello and welcome to Spaced Out Radio's Swamp. I'm Swamp Dweller, and tonight I'm going to take you on a mystic journey of the unknown, sharing tales of monsters, legends, and nightmares. Welcome to the Spaced Out Radio Swamp.
A few years ago, I worked in a bar in my hometown. I was 18 at the time. It was one of the busier spots and one of the few open until 2 a.m. I had worked there for about a year at this point, and people from the sixth form would regularly come by. This particular night wasn't too great for me. I had some terrible customers and wasn't feeling too great. I also suffered from anxiety at the time, so if my stress levels peaked, I just cried uncontrollably. Attractive, I know. Anyway, as I'm working, a group of people come in who I went to high school with. In the group were Dan and Felix. Felix was the nicest guy I've ever met, although Dan was an arse. I and Dan flirted when we first met, but nothing came of it. We were still friends, then suddenly we weren't anymore, and he would always make me uncomfortable. He'd constantly ignore me and talk about me, etc. So I tried to avoid serving this group because of Dan when they came to the bar. Luckily, another server, Leia, gets to him instead. Everything is going well until Dan stumbles to the bar and knocks over a drink someone had just ordered. Leia tries to get his attention but can't, so I try to help so he doesn't get in trouble. When I shout at him, not maliciously, just the music was loud, he comes over. I explain he knocked this woman's drink over and she wasn't happy. It had apparently spilled over her too. He turns to the woman and apologizes and offers to buy her another. When he orders, I realize he is beyond drunk. I've never seen him this bad, but I let it go. Leia grabs the bottle from the fridge, and then we turn back around, and Dan has now walked away. Now, bar policy was if someone didn't pay for a bottle that was opened or a drink that was poured, they were removed for the night, unless they came back to pay. We try to get Dan's attention, but he isn't listening. I got one of the managers that night, Max, and explained what happened. He goes around the bar and tries to talk to Dan. He also takes a member of the doorstep with him because of how intoxicated Dan is. You know, just in case. At this point, I leave and serve someone in the middle of the bar, away from all of this. About 2 minutes later, Dan is being removed. As they walk him out, I shout over to Felix, who didn't know what was going on. I explain what had happened, and he wasn't banned. Just needed to leave for the night. Felix, being Felix, says okay, sorry for the hassle, and goes to find Dan. Before they can get him to the door, Dan decides to run back in the bar and at me. He leans over the bar and shouts in my face about how I'm a bitch, etc., before being forcibly removed. This was too much for me, and I ran off to the back of the bar and burst into tears because of my anxiety. Not too long later, the other manager who wasn't involved, Joe, comes to get me. Joe was a shoot first, ask questions later kind of woman, so when she got to me, she started shouting that I was unprofessional and shouldn't run off the bar like that. Then she realized I was crying and asked what had happened. I told her the part where we didn't get on, so that was probably why it was worse. Joe was very protective of staff, so she brought me outside to see if he was still around, to identify him so she could ban him for upsetting me. I didn't want this because I knew it would just make it worse, but she insisted. We had a sister bar, so to speak, next door, and she went to see if he was there. He was. What Joe did next, I think, was really wrong, though. She sent a member of door staff in, didn't explain anything, and they physically removed Dan from the building. He was obviously very mad, and they started screaming at each other. She accused Dan of abusing me, her words, not mine, among other things, but she also made me stand and watch. Dan was infuriated and started shouting at me, saying I was full of it. I understood his anger, but I couldn't defend myself because I was crying so much. Then Dan lunges for Joe. It was ridiculous. The door staff got involved before he could do anything, at which point Felix ran outside and dragged Dan down the street. Joe asked if I was okay, and I was sent back to work. Now, all of this was just a huge mess, but I figured I could deal with the aftermath when I saw him next and explain. He had other ideas. Apparently, Dan decided to sit outside the building and watch the rest of the night, for about 2 hours roughly. I didn't know at first, but Joe noticed it would go out and keep tabs, but she didn't tell me. My boyfriend worked at the same bar at the time, and Joe told him what was happening and asked him to work near me in case I noticed. I think she thought it would calm me down. At the end of the night, we cleaned the bar, mopped the floors, etc., before going home. As I'm getting glasses from the windows, I saw Dan and he's staring at me. I don't know what he was going to do or if he was going to do anything at all, but I panic and start hyperventilating. Joe and other staff notice, as it turns out all the staff was aware at this point. They were told to get me in the cellar if he came near the building. I was made to go to the cellar at the end, where I had a minor panic attack. For the first time ever, that night door staff stayed until we all finished work. Then, one of the door staff, along with a member of the bar staff, had to scope the area before I left. Another member of bar staff also drove me home that night when I normally walked. I was so scared. I avoided going anywhere near him at school after that, and after we finished school, I barely went out. He had told all my friends his side of the story, whatever that was, and I was removed from all group chats and they cut off contact with me. He never came back to the bar, and I've only ever seen glimpses of him walking past when I visit home. To this day, I still panic when I see him.
Thank you, Swamp Dweller, for another great story. If you want more just like that, head on over to YouTube, type in Swamp Dweller, hit subscribe. It's got thousands of stories that'll freak you out each and every night. Let's bring in Robin. Robin Haynes, it's always good to have you back on Spaced Out Radio. How are you, my friend?
I am good, and it's always great to be here. How are you?
I'm happy to be here. I'm doing good. I'm doing great.
I heard that Christian is coming on the show. Does he come this week?
Yeah, no, he doesn't. Christian McLeod doesn't come on until next week, so it'll be good to have him back on.
Yeah, he's awesome. The Crypted guy.
He's so much fun. I can't wait to see him at Nebraska Bigfoot Conference.
Yeah, and we have another guest added to our roster. We are so excited. Coonbo will be on, Tim Baker. And so we're really really anxious about that to get them on in a good way. We're really happy. So lots of stuff going on with that. So we ought to have a really good time. And
Excellent.
you, my friend, will be on Saturday. Schedule's all done.
Oh, yeah? When will I be speaking?
You will be speaking the later part of the morning on Saturday.
Uh-huh.
So you've got a good break there so that you can get out all that great information you have and people can ask you questions. We're going to try to do a round table at the end of the day, Saturday, if time permits, so that way we can get all of our guests up there and the audience can, ask all the fun questions.
Did I tell you what my presentation is going to be?
No.
I'm going to break down all of the events of Flight 21.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Yeah, including us getting a hold of you from a Tim Hortons at 2:00 in the morning or
Oh
1
my
o'clock.
gosh. So much fun. I mean, I felt so bad. There is nobody on planet Earth that took it as well as you did through that whole mess. And it was like looking for where's Waldo. It's like, where is Dave now? We were all freaking out because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, by the time he gets here, he is going to be absolutely livid. And you guys, I got to be honest with you. There is nobody that will ever be in as good of a mood as Dave Scott after what he went through on that flight. What a blessing. I'm waiting for him to get there, and I'm thinking he's going to be furious. I would be furious. We finally get him here and everything goes crazy. He was a smile on his face. He was charismatic. He was just sweet old lovable Dave. What a blessing.
Well, you know what's funny about that is you did the smart thing to cure my anger right off the bat. You immediately shuffled me off right to a Mexican restaurant that had the biggest enchilada that I have ever seen.
I know, and their food was so good.
Oh, I want to go back there so bad.
I know, and we can because they're right around the corner from the event hall. So that's a possibility. I am patiently waiting. I normally have our hotels already set up, blocked off. We've already are in preparation for everybody to come because we try to spoil everybody, even at the hotels, little gift bags, whatever. But I am waiting. I normally have this done months ago. The casino, which is right in the compound for the event hall, should be done end of this week, first part of next week. And we are hoping that they will work with us and host us for the conference. Because if they're willing to do what we need them to do for the conference, because we need shuttles, we need people on task for our guests. And then we also, try to get discount for people that are coming to the conference. So there's a lot that goes into the hotel. And if they can pull off what we need them to, I'm putting everybody at the casino. So, you've got the buffets are there. There's restaurants there. You've got, of course, the casino itself. Everybody can play. They can party. They can have a good time. We can get our the people that come in to listen to our speakers. Our guests can come in there, mingle with our speakers. It would be so much fun. So not promising anything, but that's where we're headed. And I'm thinking that we might be able to pull it off. So we're going to try.
Well, I look forward to it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And, we encourage all of our listeners around North America that if you want a good weekend away, head on over to Grand Island in Nebraska.
Yeah, we are. We always have such a good time. It's family over there, and we had such a good turnout last year, and we are anticipating even more this year. I think we may next year end up in a bigger building again for the third time.
Holy cow. Holy cow. All I know is that when I was on stage last year, there was about 400 people in there paying attention, 400-500 people. And they were all glued to it, just trying to get a piece of anything that they could of information. So, I mean, it was so great and very generous, great questions from the audience that we had. And I'm so looking forward to speaking again. But I will be speaking on the area that we have investigated with that has all
Good.
the weird stuff. So that'll be my first presentation on Flight 21 that I've done strictly on that flight.
Good. Guys, I apologize if you hear any critters in the background. The last 3 nights, the outside around my house has been so active. It's keeping animals awake all night long, which means I'm awake all night long. Like, I'm thrilled that everybody's out there, but it's driving me crazy. And so we are been up and down. So I'm apologizing ahead of time.
No problem. No problem. Robin, let's before we get to audience questions here, because I know they're going to start coming in here. They normally do for you for the next final half hour of the show. On the cryptid side of things, I've been thinking about this a lot recently, just in regards to the wonderment about different clans.
Mhm.
Okay, because I was talking to some indigenous people who I was talking Bigfoot with the other day. We were talking about how the clans are all different depending on their area where they're from, how many there are, whether or not it's a violent area with wildlife or whether it's a an area that's a feeding ground or wherever. You can have, say, 100 square miles or even 50 square miles and have a couple of different clans that have completely different attitudes.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the male species, like the patriarch of the family, or are they like lions where they have a a real sense of territory, a sense of defense, protection, attitude that goes along with it?
Well, to begin with, most of the time you see the leaders are male. Predominantly, they're male. I will say this, down in the Ohio River Valley, there was a group that was down there. And for whatever reason, not that there was a male clan leader, but there was a female there. And that girl had some power to her. And they referred to her as their medicine woman. And she really ruled that place. Like, the only one that went over the clan leader was this female. And I don't see that a lot. You do see some females that are pretty powerful, but this woman, she was very old and she literally controlled everything. As far as their territory, now, like where I'm at here in South Carolina, I've got 3 or 4 clans that wander in here. When I was in Michigan, I had at least 3 that were there. And at one point in time, we had a 4th clan come in. And they had their own territories, different clans. They don't really share it. They'll monitor it and, whether or not there's going to be a problem. It's just like we have our own property. You have your property. Somebody's walking down the road and they walk on your land, you're not normally going to just like freak out at them. But, you want them to know that that's yours. And they will have a large area that they'll hunt as far as that territory. Now, different places, you may get other ones that come in and hunt. They don't normally like to share it, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be argumentative or it's going to be a problem. They're just neighbors. That's really how it works. When they come into my yard, and where I'm at, like my new property I'm going to is hundreds of acres. Where I'm at right now, I've got 1.5 acres, and I'm back in the woods in the pine forest. And they'll come in from different angles, each clan. And it's like they'll show up here. And I'll have, 3 different clans, not the whole clan, but members from that clan here. And they get along fine because it's almost like a neutral territory. But they are going to be territorial of their specific property. There's different ones that let our people come into their territory, and certain parts of it, they don't want it. They'll run them off. Doesn't mean they're going to hurt them, but it's not any different than if you are taking care of your yard and all of a sudden the neighborhood kids come over and start a football game in your yard. You're going to run them off. It doesn't necessarily have to end badly. And a lot of them will literally, when I say run you off, they will chase you off their land. Now in Michigan, the one that was there, it was an exceptionally large clan. And I think that was because there were 3 or 4 that wandered in and out of there. I had a notebook and I kept a description of each individual that I saw come into the yard and a name that I had given them. If they didn't give me their name, I gave them a name, just, so I knew who it was. Over the course of a few years, there were 60 different individuals that came through there. They are not normally that many in a clan. I mean, I can't speak for every clan out there, but the ones that I worked with, the clan itself, have been anywhere from 10, maybe to 20. They haven't been that big. The average that I've noticed is 11 to 13. It just depends. And I've seen it where they've been right next to each other, just like you would your neighbors. But they do have set off hunting areas that they like to hunt in, and they don't want anybody coming in, as far as other Sasquatch into that area.
Do they then, okay, obviously the majority of people out there who head into the forest, they may not be believers or don't think they'll ever have an encounter or don't believe Sasquatch are in that area, which I think is ridiculous since they are in most forested areas.
Yeah.
However, is Sasquatch territorial to when people come around? Let's say a group of us decided to go camping in an area. Would they be curious? Would they try and scare us out? What would the attitude be?
It would depend on the leader of that clan. And again, these are genetically linked to us. They are not our people, but they are a type of people. Okay. So you are looking at every single one as an individual personality. There's no 2 alike. It depends what area you're in. It depends what, I don't want to say type because I don't believe in the types. It's just more cultural, just like it is with us. But I know in some areas, it also depends on what's on that land. If you have land and there's Native American burial grounds on there, which I've gone to places like that, they are much more highly protective of that land. And they may run you out. If they feel that you're pure of heart, they read your intent. They're the best lie detector test that is out there. They know your intent. They know your heart. If they feel that you come in peace, if they feel that your intent is pure, they may let you wander through there and not give you a problem. And I've done that before. I did that in Pennsylvania. And we were fine. But let somebody come in with a lower frequency, not pure of heart, and they are going to protect that land. They don't want it there. Most of them seem to be such a good reader of your frequency. People that are lower frequency, darker in intent, it does make them feel physically ill. They don't want you around and they will run you out. So there's a lot of variables as far as running you out. I've gone out in the woods. I went to this one place and they literally came up all around us, like very, very close. And nobody chased us out. Nobody growled. Nobody gave us any problems. It was just like checking us out to see who was there, went about their business. Not an issue. But I know other people that have gone into that same area that were more low vibrational, they didn't want them there. They wanted them gone. If they feel that you're in there and you're going to disturb their land, they want you gone. And I advise everybody, if you go out there, I mean, we all know that when you go out in the forest, a lot of people take a weapon because you have bear, you have cougars.
Well, that's on Robin Hayes, the Crypted Report continues right here on Spaced Out Radio.
This is Spaced Out Radio, and your host, Dave Scott.
All right, very clear. Raven Hayes, how are you? D. Bapto, welcome to the chat room. I've been chased out of the forest twice.
Mm-hmm.
Not fun.
No, but the thing of it is that you don't know what was going on. It could be the attitude of that particular one that was there, because a lot of them just have a pissy attitude, just like our people do.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not one set way. That's the problem with it. You've got to be able to read it, and sometimes you can't. Or if they have their kids out, they aren't wanting anybody near them. Nobody could snare those kids unless they want them to. Or they'll run you out if there's something that could be harmful to you. There's such a large amount of reasons for it. And then we have some that just are not willing to let our people or even another Sasquatch come into their area. They're that pissy about it. Most of them are fine, and you don't get that. But there are certain ones. The personalities are so individualized, it's ridiculous.
Well, hold that thought. Because I want to get that on the air. All right. So that'll be cool. That will be cool. What did it look like? We never saw it. We only heard it when it was reaching us out.
Yeah, a lot of people get escorted out. They put one on each side of you, they flank you, and they move you out.
They usually work in a triangle type, don't they?
Some of them do, yeah. I mean, they've got one ahead that's watching. They've got one on each side to kind of, push you along. When I got out with my friend of mine and we went out in the woods the one time, and I talked about this on here before, and it got so dark out, we couldn't even see to get out. And we didn't know which way was to the front of the park. I mean, it was that black. They drained the batteries on the cell phones. So we couldn't even turn the light on there. And all we could see was eyes shine. And that was like less than 10 feet from us on both sides. They were killing a raccoon farther off our right. And they literally stayed one behind us, one ahead of us, and two on each side, and just kind of guided us out. They never tried to harm us. I never felt threatened, ever. But they were definitely moving us along the path to the front. But the rest of their group was back there hunting. We were where we weren't supposed to be, but we got lost back there. We went in and it was broad daylight, but the woods were so thick, it didn't let any sunlight in. And then it was like, we thought we were there for a half hour, 45 minutes, and we were there for 4 hours. Like, we had missing time and everything, and it went so black. My friend was standing in front of me. I could not see her. Like, I kept reaching my hand forward just to grab the back of her shirt because I couldn't see her. I've never been in the woods that it was that dark before. It was crazy. But they ushered us out. Never tried to harm us. We were a bit nervous, clearly, because they were so close. And the one kept mind speaking. The rest of them didn't. Just the one did. But yeah, we got, escorted out, so to speak.
Yeah, it's not fun.
No.
It's not fun.
No, I was grateful that they were kind about it, but it was very nerve-wracking. Not something I want to repeat.
We got about a minute 45.
Now, I've only had one that ran after me, and that was he bluff charged me directly. And that was in Texas. And then once we got in the truck to take off, he hit the back end of the truck and was running, behind the truck through the wood. But, he was not pleasant. he was not our friend.
No, they're not very fun.
Yeah, if you get one that's, in a pissy mood, but, some of them are like, you always have that one neighbor. The neighbors all get along and they want to have block parties and everything. And then you have that one that's just so grumpy. Everybody avoids the house.
Sorry, my sciatica is acting up, so I'm trying to get comfortable here.
Oh, and that's miserable.
Doesn't feel good.
No, I get it now and then, and it's miserable. You can't do anything.
I have to call you this within the next little bit here to go over flights with you.
Okay, yeah, because I'm gonna need to know what's going on and pricing and stuff like that.
We'll get it
Yeah.
figured out.
Oh yeah.
All right. Here we go in like 7 seconds. Here we go with the final half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. We're talking with Robin Haynes on the Crypted Report. We're loving it that you are here as well. Reminder to all of you that if you have missed portions of this show or others, you can always check out our free archives on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Here we go. Robin Haynes is with us, hanging on out, doing our thing, talking all things cryptid. How you doing, Robin?
I'm doing great. Always happy to be here.
We were talking about Bigfoot clans and territorialism that they have at times. And let me ask you, are they a danger when they're like that?
They can be. They can be. I mean, and I never tell anybody. I see a lot of people that do it. They're not all good. They're not all bad. Primarily, they're relatively easy to get along with. Their culture is different than ours. It's very much a respect thing, but they are not all good. And the bad ones, again, these are high frequency beings. So every emotion they have runs on a higher scale than ours. So the ones that are not pleasant, that don't like us, because our people aren't kind, we kill what they don't understand. And some of us are good to them, but not all. And so the ones that are crabby, they're lethal. They can be. But then you have other ones. And fortunately for us, more seems to be good than bad. I look at it as 3 categories. You have the ones that are just dangerous to be around because they have no tolerance for us whatsoever. You have the ones that just don't want anything to do with us, so avoid us at all costs. And then the ones that are just like, okay, some of these people aren't that bad. We can take care. We can deal with it. We don't mind them around. And there seems to be a lot of them that are like that. Predominantly, that seems to be the larger group. And that seems to be worldwide. I work with a lot of people on all parts of the world. And I get the most people say that they either just will move away from them or they're curious and watch them. So I think we have more of that group than anything else. Now, you can go to secluded areas, land between the lakes or whatever. And the ones that are there mostly are just nasty. And they go there to get away from us, but then we follow them. So that, there's that on us too. But predominantly, they're not too bad. But you have to look at what's on that land. I've been to areas where there's Indian burial grounds there. I haven't had problems with them there. They didn't bother me. They kept a very close eye on me. But they didn't bother me. But they have ran other people out of there. So again, they read your intent. They read your heart. If they think there's a problem, they want you out. If you come into an area and their children are there, they want you out. Unless they are bringing the kids to you, they don't want you with them. I've had people that I know that have come into an area mistakenly, not knowing anything was going on, and they were teaching one of the kids to hunt. They didn't want him there. They didn't run him out, but he had a little cabin he was staying in. And once he got in the cabin, they kept pounding on the cabin to make sure he did not come out until they finished what they were doing with the child. And then they didn't care what he did. He could come in and out or, go about his business. So it depends what's actually going on that land. They are extremely not only protective of their kids, but they do tend to be protective of us. Not all the time, but there's a good portion of them that if you were to go out in the woods and there is a bear there or a wolf or whatever could hurt you, they will do what they have to do to turn you around and get you out of there.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. It's just the individual. I wish it was a clearer cut thing. And I know a lot of people try to make it that way. But what we need to realize is when it comes to these beings, it is like an onion. There's a multitude of layers. It's always complicated. It's always more in depth. It's never just at face value. There's always a deeper meaning, something hidden in there. It is just not one clear cut way.
Let's get to some audience questions here. Let's go to Ian. Robin, why do paranormal hunters do a runner at the first noise they hear?
Trying to understand the question, paranormal hunters. I think the paranormal hunters, if I'm understanding the question, and they go in there and they want, something that's really cool. They want to dabble in the paranormal, but the thing of it is when they get it in their face, they can't handle it. They don't know what to expect because there's so many unknowns, and then they panic. I had someone reach out to me that is very insistent that I help him find an underground alien base. Okay. We have no business in them to begin with. And I told this person that several times, and he's pushing and pushing and pushing. I guarantee you, if you were to go to them, you're not going to like what you get. And not all aliens are bad. A lot of them are very good and very helpful. I personally will not help anybody hurt anything, whether it's an alien or a Sasquatch. But they go into, these people that are looking for the paranormal, looking for the cryptids, and they're all hot and bothered to go do it until reality hits. They get out in the woods. They don't realize the abilities that these beings have. They don't really, while they know they're big, they don't really grasp how big they are until you're standing next to one and you're up at its thigh and, the rest of the body's above you. And then they go into panic. They all want it. They all want to be out there. They all want to interact. But then the first noise that they hear, the reality sets in. And then again, and I say this all the time. I know I sound like a broken record. These are all high frequency beings. And you don't realize until you're in front of them that the frequency that radiates off of them feels like a heavy, heavy blanket being laid on top of you. It doesn't hurt. It's not painful unless you're being zapped. It's just a heavy blanket. And it's because that frequency is so much higher than ours. And that terrifies people. And then on top of that, they can project emotions onto you. So if they don't want you there, they're going to project what they call the wall of fear. They're going to make you think that it's your own thoughts and that you're frightened. Just like when they do the love bubble and they push love on you. It's the most amazing thing ever. Most people cry when they feel it because it's so intense. So they want it, but they don't grasp the magnitude and the capabilities that these things have. And then when they get them, they run like scared bunnies.
All right, let's move on. Let's go over to Area 51. Do you think First Nations people were seeing UFOs rather than spirits? The reason I say that, I'm scared to step on indigenous land.
I think that they definitely see spirits there. And do I think that they've seen UFOs? Probably, because all these things like to hang around together. Again, high vibrations, high frequency, lots of energy there. They all tend to feed off each other. Now, I have been fortunate enough to be on Native American land a couple of different times. And just the energy that you get there is a blessing. It's just incredible. And a lot does go on there, spirit-wise, cryptid-wise especially. UFOs, absolutely. So I think when you get on Native American soil, because it's to me anyway, when I was there, it's just a blessing. It's so highly charged with energy from the people and the past and the spirits and everything that are there and the cryptids. there's a different feel to it, definitely. It's a beautiful thing. But all of these beings, whether it's dogmen, Sasquatch, spirits, aliens, UFOs, they're drawn to it because it is so highly charged. So do I think that it's been one or the other? No. Do I think that both are there? 100% yes. In my experience.
Love it. Love it. Let's go to another question here. Let's go to Susan. Do Bigfoot have their babies in the spring like animals or anytime like us?
Pretty much. I mean, I think if it was their choice, they would make it so it's a little bit nicer in the spring. But no, they have them just like we do. You know, they have different times of year that they have them. They are not any more animal than we are. Okay, we cycle throughout the year. We conceive throughout the year. We give birth throughout the year. I think, you know, as far as if they were to plan it, they would obviously want to do it when the weather's better. Doesn't always work that way. I've known many a female that have had babies in the wintertime, which is problematic. They always go to the nearest water source to bathe them, you know, and so that's not a good thing. But no, they can have them any time of year. I see a lot of them bring them out of, you know, the shelters. And for whatever reason, I always see more babies around October. And by then they're 2 or 3 months old. But I have also known plenty of females that have given birth in the winter months.
All right, let's move on to another one. Let's go over to Jay. So what you're saying is, if they use infrasound to scare people away, or could they also project love to the right people?
Absolutely. And I can't stress this enough. It is the most incredible feeling ever when they do, because they are higher frequency and the emotions run deeper. They love deeper too. They hate deeper, but they also love deeper. And it's, for lack of a better term, I call it the love bubble. They will project that love from them to whatever specific person they want it to, or group. And when they do, you are overcome because they love at a much deeper level than we do. They really and truly do. You know, your emotions, your highest frequency comes from your heart, love being the highest frequency that there is. And everything they do, because they are emotionally charged, is at a much higher magnitude than ours. So when they and I've had them do this to me a lot. I've had the dogmen do it to me. They will project what I call the love bubble onto you. And 9 out of 10 people that feel it, it makes them cry because it's such an incredible and deep love. And they can pick which person they send it to, or if you're in a group of people and they want to do it to everybody, they will. They are very specific in that.
All right, let's go to another one here. Let's head on over to, let's see here. Let's go to Raven. Do Sasquatch move between dimensions? I live in the UK and there have been sightings. I think that might account for it.
Yes, they absolutely do go between dimensions. They also go to different planes. They use portals. The UK actually has a very large amount of them. I've worked with a ton of people in the UK. There's a lot of them over there. There really is no place on the planet that they're not. There may be areas that, you know, they're less comfortable there because of climate or whatever, but there's really no place. I know people that have had them in Hawaii. They're a little bit smaller version, but they are relatives of them and, you know, part of that Sasquatch heritage. But yeah, they portal anywhere they want to go. And again, and we've talked about this before, the clan leader dictates whether or not they're going to allow that clan to use paranormal abilities. So some clans stay very much in the physical and will not use them, but they all have access to them. Think of it as an expressway, just like we use for our cars. They can travel anywhere. They can use a rift, which is just basically a tear in the veil that they can go into. It's not open all the time. Portals can be attached. They can be free floating, and they can open them and create them at will anywhere they want to. But they absolutely are multi-dimensional, and they will go through the different planes. They're really, in a lot of your cryptids, all the cryptids can do that. Your elementals can, your dimensionals can. So yeah, it's a busy place. A lot more out there than what we see.
You ready for another one?
Yeah, Sure am.
All right, let's go to Blue Cruise. What do the Sasquatch people think of this radio show? Oh, come on. You're not kidding in.
But you know
They're not-
what? There's a couple of them that actually, they watch you all the time. Not you personally, but I mean us as people. They may not know specifically, oh, it's Spaced Out Radio Show. They know people that are on it. They get a feeling from it. And I remember when my kids were little, they would sit outside and look in the window at the TV. They wouldn't know what my kids were watching, but they would know it's something.
That I have heard of.
Oh, yeah, they do it all the time. They absolutely do. I know one that literally gets excited when certain things are on the TV. Doesn't mean they're sitting down, grabbing the remote, and putting it on, their favorite channel. It means that it's entertaining for them. As far as what do they think is Spaced Out Radio, they probably don't know it's specific. They can read everybody's heart. They can read everybody's intent. So if they were listening, because they're all telepathic, I have a couple that listen in on everything I do and say, then they get that feeling that comes off the audience and the show itself. And I'm sure that they would be very enthralled with it because, you get a lot of love here. You have a lot of fun here. And the thing about Spaced Out Radio is most of the audience are really kind people. I think more so than a lot of shows.
Yeah, we try. I want to ask you something on a personal level here. Personal to me is, and I'm going to use your advice on this.
Okay.
When I look at the adventure that I'm going to be going on starting this year, which I've talked to you about,
Mm-hmm.
whoever they are, have given me snippets of what to go through, what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
I've asked point blank whether I'm safe. They haven't answered that.
What I'm getting is you are safe to a point. Depending what else comes in your path, that's where you may not be as safe.
Animal or
Both.
phenomena?
Because when I asked, like when you said that, first I heard no. Let him know that we are not the most dangerous thing out there. There are other dangers that he'll encounter. So that could be anything from animal to other things. People don't seem to realize when you go out in the woods, everybody's concerned about, oh, will it be a dogman? Will it be a Sasquatch? That is the kindest thing that you're going to run into. If you are in a very paranormal area, there are certain ETs that are very, very dangerous. There are certain ETs that are lovely. I've engaged with some that are just wonderful, but I've also dealt with some of the nasty ones. I've ended up in intensive care because of some of the nasty ones. So it depends on what's out there. We are living in a very, for lack of a better way to put it, a very paranormal time. We're going through this shift with all these higher frequencies, and that's bringing in a lot of things. There's a lot of things going on in our world right now. So, you see all these missing 411 cases, and everybody automatically goes to, it's got to be a Sasquatch, it's got to be a dogman. And in some cases it is. I'm not going to lie, it is. But more than not, there are other things out there that we really don't have a clue about. Whether it's government created that's been dropped off in certain areas, whether it's ET created, whether it's regular ETs, whether it's a vortex, whether it's a portal. So the fear and the concern does not necessarily mean it's coming from a Sasquatch. It could be, but you don't know what's going to come into the area that you're in. You may have your regulars that are there all the time that you're very comfortable with. I was like that, every day I would go out and interact with them. And every night I was out in the woods at 2 a.m. sitting with a very large group of Sasquatch, and they're walking around me. I felt 100% safe. I never had a concern. They would tap on my window for me to come outside. I'd go in the middle of the night. And I was safe. And then one night something else came in, and I don't know what it was. I know they told me to run to the house, go in the house, and not come out no matter what. And then 2 hours later, they were back at my window and they said, you're safe now. I never did find out what it was. So it's not so much what you're going to interact with that is normally there. It's what can come in that you're not knowing about. And that's the variant that changes it. You know, if it's a regular day, a regular night, whatever, and you know what you're dealing with right there, you're very safe. If that's a good group, you don't know what can come in and out. And that's the problem. It's just like if you go to the store and you go to this, say it's Walmart, you go to Walmart all the time. And then all of a sudden somebody comes in and starts shooting. You don't know that that's going to happen. I went to Walmart a year ago. I go to the same Walmart all the time, multiple times a week, never had a problem. I had a man come up to me, try to force himself on me in the lawn and garden department and push me up against the shelf. I mean, the same store I've gone to for 7 years, I've never had a problem. So it's what can come into the area that you're in that you are more in danger of. If you have researched that area, you've checked out that area, you're comfortable in that area, and you feel like, you know, you're taking the precautions necessary and there's a minimal amount of danger there, you're fine. But no matter where you go, no matter how safe you think you are, always know that there are variables and things that can come in. Portals are expressways. Things bebop in them all the time. You know, for all of the 411 missing cases, out of every 10, I promise you, 8 of them were not cryptid related. There are much worse things out there than cryptids.
Well, we'll have that private discussion off air because that intrigues me a little bit.
Yep. And I'll scan it. Yeah, I'll remote view it and scan it.
I would appreciate that because it is a little weird.
Yep. And as always, keep me on speed dial.
Robin Haynes, thank you for coming back. We will talk to you next week. As we say goodnight to Robin. Rocking in the background with the little brother is watching. Bumblefoot is our official music for Space Out Radio. Rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening at work, at home, guitars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, Elkin, Facebook stream, LinkedIn, the Space Travelers Club, and on X, hashtag SpaceOut.
I know you're out there somewhere.
Remember, this show is copyrighted by Space Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us. Because together, my
make a
friends,
mistake. We're watching.
Feel the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo Train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night, everybody. All right.
Okay. You guys have a wonderful night. See you next week.
We'll chat soon.
Okay, babe. Bye.
Bye. Jay, you can find Robin. I just saw your question. You can find her on just Robin Haynes on Facebook. Very easy to find, and she always messages back. You can find her on my Facebook page. All right, what do we got here? We got Feb 11, 25. Excuse me. Jerry Lahane, how you doing? Over on X. Thanks, Yennefer. Sorry, guys, I'm tired. We're only 2 days in, and it's already been an extra long week. Is what it is. Is what it is. All right. See where that goes there. Turn that off. Science Bob tomorrow night. It's going to be great. All right. No, this is just a snapback. Big J, how you doing? I'm like worn out. I feel tonight like I usually do on a Thursday or a Friday night. Let me ask you guys this as I get ready to edit. In regards, I don't know how many of you are on our Spaced Out Radio group on Facebook, but am I the a-hole for not posting posts of other groups or podcasts or conferences that do not support SOR? See, here's my theory on that. I want you to hear me out for a second. One second, I just got to type something out. Brandenburg. There we go. And one more. Okay. I probably, out of all the posts that we pre-approve, I probably post 80% of them. However, I also see a lot of podcasts trying to jump in and promote their podcast or people in their conferences in our rooms. And I don't normally allow that. And I usually will will oh, didn't want to open that. I usually will erase the post. Am I the a-hole for doing that? Because here's my thing. I work hard for our audience. I don't want people poaching our audience, trying to get our listeners to go to their Paracons or anything like that. It sounds really selfish, I know. But I kind of have a rule for our team. My rule is we'll post a conference if SOR, somebody from our SOR team, is speaking there. So it could be me, it could be Rob, it could be Jackie or Lee or, Jessica Jones back in the day. Right? Could have been any one of us. But I guess where I got a little hairy with it was a long time ago. I learned that, when I was kind of new in this field, I learned quite quickly that people's word wasn't good in this field. I'd get people, hey, can you promote our conference on your show? You got such a big audience. Can you promote our audience or our conference or whatever? And I'd be like, well, I'd love to speak at your conference. Oh, we should have you next year. Yeah. We're already full up for this year. So you promote their conference. Next year comes along and they do the exact same thing. And you're not invited. And I figure, we're not the best on our social media platforms by far. Things like that take time. But we've worked hard to build our audience, and I don't need other podcasts coming in trying to piggyback off of our listeners, trying to gain listenership through our popularity. I don't like that. I think that's shady. I don't do that to other groups. Don't like it done to us. Just bugs me. Maybe it shouldn't, but it does. And the funny part about it is if you go on our Facebook page and you see the pinned post, it literally says, please do not post your conferences or your podcasts in here or YouTube channels or something like that. The thing is, like, I try and be a nice guy about things, right? But when you just get ripped off, like, I worked hard for that audience. Everybody works hard for their audience. I just don't try and poach. Now there is a little bit of a difference. I should say this. There is a little bit of a difference. So let's say somebody like Lon Strickler, when he posts in our room, I allow his posts. Because he does a lot for our show and he promotes our show. So I don't mind. Right? I don't mind that. I think that's cool. Where's the end here? Right there. Agreed, CS. He is family. This show is 10 years old. Where is the beginning here? I think I cut it off. November 30th, 2014 is our birthday. Thank you, Paramarv. Paramarv's our resident historian of SOR. How long you been with us now, Paramarv? 5 years? 6 years? Bombshell, you've been around for a while. How long has it been for you? 5 years, 6 years as well? 7 years? November 30th, Vanessa. Paramarv's 3 years. I thought you were longer than that, Paramarv. The longest listener that we have in our chat room is Joe Monk. Clean that up. Science Bob tomorrow night, everybody. Big thank you to Walter, Pam, JSCO, Jay, Firewater, General Linda, Major Lee, Chill Farm, and Jay for the super chats. I appreciate the love, everybody. I'm nearly passing out here, so I'm just going to finish this behind the scenes, and then I am going to say goodnight. So we'll see you all tomorrow night. If you do, don't forget to hit subscribe, ring that bell, and we'll talk to you tomorrow, everybody.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
If you need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.